Hey mamas, so this is Mama Confession Mondays, episode 13, and I have had a hard one trying to figure out when and how to do this episode. It's been a doozy. So we had Mother's Day on Sunday, so that's the 9th, and the days leading up to it, I almost wanted to pretend that the day wasn't happening. And I usually love Mother's Day. I love it so much, but it was the first year without my husband. And my husband Terry was the one that always organized Mother's Day. He planned it out weeks in advance. He got the boys involved. Usually, and it's always slightly different, but usually the same thing. So breakfast in bed. He would wake up the boys. They would make me breakfast, bring it to me in bed while they had their breakfast and had their talk out in the kitchen. Just let me have my breakfast in peace. Then my husband would organize a place where they have pottery made and you can paint it and glaze it and everything, and design it however you want. So, and we would usually get a plate and I would do my handprint and my kid's handprint. It would be put in the kiln, and yeah, that's fun for me. I like doing that. So over the years my husband has made sure to, and sometimes it's different, it's not always in the same spot to do it, but last year we didn't really get to do it because of COVID and everything was shut down. But the year before that, he took us to Bowen Island and and that one was a little bit different. So we were actually able to sculpt what we wanted out of clay. And then we were able to come back, I believe. I think that's how it worked. We were able to come back and glaze it, and then it was ready. And that was so special because my son, he made a wooden, or not a wooden, he made a pottery bowl with a two-headed serpent design, and it's part of the Musqueam creation story. So it was just so great. So it was a two-headed serpent named Seathkey, and then on the other side was Heltz, which was the one that killed Seathkey, so that this two-headed serpent would stop destroying the land, really. Yeah. So this Mother's Day, we didn't get to do the pottery thing because, again, COVID. So we stayed close to home, and my oldest one was like, "Mom, what do you want for Mother's Day?" And I said, "I don't want gifts. I just want you guys to get along and for you to let me garden and help me, and that's it. That's all I want." So I did get to do a bit of gardening, which was great, and I made breakfast. The kids got along for the most part, and I think, our family and friends and Facebook knew that this was my first Mother's Day without my husband. So, family brought bouquets of flowers and kind messages, and then we were able to have dinner over at my sister-in-law's house later that night. So it was all good. People stopped by, brought belated gifts for Tegan, checked in, and it was good. It was a good Mother's Day. Like, even though inside I was pretty emotional, and I was, I tried so hard to keep my emotions in check and just stay upbeat, even though I wasn't really feeling it. I think for me, though, Father's Day is going to be really hard. Father's Day is going to be so tough. I don't know how we're going to figure that one out. Usually Father's Day, I would organize the kids, and Terry would do the driving because I'm not very good at driving outside of Vancouver. There's just too many highways and too many things, and I forget which exit you're supposed to take. So we would drive all the way out to like Cultus Lake area, and we would always go to Tappan's Pitch and Putt. And then after that, there's a little restaurant right there at Tappan's, and we would have our lunch there. And then we would drive to the ice cream shop that's a few blocks away from there. And usually around the time of Father's Day, there's always there's like a small little fruit stand, and they usually are selling like strawberries and maybe raspberries, but for sure strawberries. And they pick them early in the morning when they're nice and dewy. And so that's always been our tradition for Father's Day. My husband loves that. Loved that. I still have to get used to those tenses, I think. It's gonna take a while. So if you hear me saying things in the present tense when I should be saying it in the past tense, please bear with me. In my mind, my husband's still here, even if he's not physically here. So I'll catch myself sometimes saying, oh, he loves that. And then I have to think about it and say, he loved that. It's a process. It's gonna take a while. So, the next day, after Mother's Day, my son, this week, we're still part of this week, so it just happened on Monday. So this whole week, my son in kindergarten, it's his turn to be the shining star of the week. Now, one thing that they do is they because of COVID, they're taking a picture of their stuffy and their favorite book, and we get to videotape each other, like me reading the book. And then there's a science experiment involved that I also get to record, and I can insert some pictures, I guess, of it. So my son, he's allowed to bring the stuffy because it helps comfort him, and especially with the year he's had, like, I don't think anyone's going to fault him for bringing a stuffy to school. And I have talked a little bit about how both my kids, but like my middle child, Emery, is also, being taunted and bullied. So on Monday, at the end of the day, there's the boy that's kind of been bullying him. He walks across the room with a pencil crayon, and he goes to Emery's desk, and he's trying to stab the stuffed bunny. And Emery tries to pull the bunny away, and the boy ends up stabbing Emery's palm. And so when I go to do pickup, there is kids in the other kindergarten class that do an earlier pickup. So they were coming up to me and saying, Emery got hurt, he was bleeding, he had to go to the nurse's office. But they weren't explaining exactly how he got hurt, and so they're like, oh, it looks like there's a scab there. Like, I went, okay. Like, I'm thinking in my head, maybe he like tripped and scraped his palm on some gravel or something. I wasn't thinking of anything horrible. And so when Emery came, and he looked okay, he was fine, and one of his friends was holding his backpack, he comes up to me and he goes, Mom, this boy stabbed me with a pencil crayon. And I'm looking at him, and then he says, but what upset him more was he said, this boy says sorry, but he never means it, and he just keeps doing it, and he doesn't care. And that really struck home with me, that my son feels that No matter how many times this kid says sorry, he keeps doing it and there's no remorse. He doesn't care. And so the teacher was there close by him and was explaining the situation, and he was distraught. He was very upset about it. And you know, he said that it's going to go straight to the vice principal because this is a serious thing. And so I was feeling like, okay, it's going to the vice principal. They're going to take this seriously. They have my son's back. All right, so I was feeling a bit upset because my son got stabbed, but I felt like, okay, they're gonna take this seriously. And I asked my son in front of the teacher, I said, Emery, do you feel safe coming back to school? And my son, without missing a beat, said 100% absolutely not. I said, okay, if you were beside your teachers the whole time and maybe around your friends that you feel safe around, would you feel safe enough to come back to school? And he said, maybe a little bit. And so I said, okay. So that we drive away, and I have to drive my oldest, we all drive. We all have to go. So I was driving my son to boxing and get a call from the nurse, and she said, you know, this is not emergency, but Emery has a very small, like, wound on his hand, and I tried my best to clean it, but he said it was really sore and he was crying, so he wouldn't tell me the reason for it. And I said, well, yeah, a child in his class stabbed him with a pencil crayon. She said, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, try to clean it the best you can tonight, maybe when it's not so sore, blah, 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 and I'm sorry this happened. And I said, okay. I missed a call from the vice principal while I was talking to the nurse, and then I wasn't able to get a chance to reach him back. But anyways, I felt okay trying to negotiate with Emery to go back to school the next day, except for I went to go try to change my bed sheets, and I was squatting like really low, kneeling down, and I re-injured my right knee. I injured it a few years back, and doing a practicum, same movement, and every single time I've re-injured my knee, it's been the same movement. So I really need to train myself not to do that same movement. So squatting low so that my knees are bent like this, and then turning to the right has, I have a torn meniscus, and so every time I do that movement, I just re-injure it, re-inflame it, re-tear it. I don't know what it is. So I couldn't take them to school the next day anyways. Well, I guess it's a good thing I didn't take him to school, because the next day I had from 2 p.m. up until 7:30 p.m. phone calls, and I called and checked in with the vice principal, and then he was just going to pop into a meeting with that family and with the teacher and talk about things. And so I was waiting for the follow-up. And I was really upset to hear that they're calling it an accident and that it's not labeled bullying, because that Monday night I sent an email saying, you know, I'm very frustrated that this happened. I hope there's going to be some firm actions involved, and that I think it's safe to say we can call this bullying now, because it's crossed over into physical harm. So what I got back from the phone call was that this was considered an accident, that it's not considered bullying, and my brain short-circuited. I was so angry, I was shaking. I was so angry, I was crying on the phone, because I couldn't figure out how we could be in two different spots on this, how we could have two different mindsets on the same situation. I couldn't figure it out. And I said, how could it be an accident there was thought process in there where the boy walked across the room with a pencil crayon and stabbed my son's stuffed bunny. And my son tried to move the bunny away and he got stabbed. How can this be an accident? And the teacher kind of explained, like, no, I think he didn't mean to hurt Emery. That was the accident. And I was like, she's like, he shouldn't have been doing any of what he did. Those were poor choices, but he didn't mean to hurt Emery. I was like, yes, he did. Having the thought to walk across the way to stab Emery's stuffed bunny is to hurt Emery. I was like, I don't know any child or any person who would think otherwise, where if someone holds like a stuffed animal or anything, an object that they hold dear, and someone comes and either tries to grab it out of their hand and shatter it or stab a stuffed bunny that someone holds dear, that is to hurt the other person. I don't see how it can be. And the response I got back was, children at this age have silly ideas sometimes, and they're not thinking of trying to hurt the person, they just have a silly idea. And I was like, I have an early childhood education background. I have raised 2 5-year-olds now. Who are you trying to tell this to? Because I don't know. Am I alone in that thought where 5-year-olds, yes, they're 5, but they understand the concept of belongings. They understand the concept of empathy and love, or they could if you talk about it or you share it or you teach it. So I don't know. I said I couldn't. I was so frustrated. I was crying. And the reason why I didn't post, like I didn't try to film this until now, which is like how many days later? This is a Friday. So it happened on the Monday. This is Friday. Is because I was so emotional. I've been crying since Tuesday. Since I've gotten these phone calls about it being an accident and not bullying. Silly ideas, not meant to hurt Emery. I've been crying since then. And I was so emotional. I was like, I can't film this because all you hear is me blubbering. Then I get a phone call from the counselor later that evening, and she wants to know how I'm doing and how Emery's doing. And I start breaking down. I said, I am so mad. Oh, and with that phone call with the teacher, I was crying, and I said, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to be a 5-year-old and loses his dad, and then 3 weeks later has to go to school, a school he's never been to. You don't know what it's like to hear a boy, a 5-year-old, cry and pray out to his dad that he has the strength to go to school, to feel strong enough to go to school. I said that all through tears. I was like, you don't know. And she's like, yes, I understand, and da-da-da. I'm like, you don't know. I was in your corner trying to encourage my son to feel strong enough to go to school so that he could weather this storm, even though in his heart is heavy. He's lost his dad. And then you can't protect him by saying that this shouldn't have happened and I'm sorry and this is bullying and we're going to put a stop to it. Instead of having that stance, you're saying this is an accident. You getting stabbed in the hand is an accident. Your stuffed bunny getting stabbed is an accident. I said to this teacher, I said, did this boy go to school the next day? She goes, yes. Oh, but he's really upset. He was crying and he brought a card for Emery. I said, well, he's upset and he brought a card for Emery. My son is upset and crying and doesn't feel safe in your school and doesn't want to go to school anymore. There is, like, let's weigh that for a second. The person who attacked my son can go back to school with a card. The person who got stabbed and had his bunny stabbed is afraid to go to school. And he has no faith in the school or feeling safe. So I was a wreck Tuesday. Wednesday, even though I didn't want to take him to school, I took him to school. I explained to him that if at all, anytime he wants to come home, he is to tell the teachers, and I will come pick him up, no questions asked. And he said to me, I hope that actually will happen. I said, why? And he said, well, whenever I say I want to go home, the teacher tries to take me for a walk or distract me. And I said, well, that was before. That was to encourage you to cope in school and do the best, like, do what you can. This is a whole new ball game. I said, this is your safety, and you getting out of a situation to avoid physical harm, because it's gotten to that point now. This is a different ball game. If you want to come home, you tell the teachers. If they won't listen, you talk to the vice principal. If he won't listen, you talk to the assistant principal. And you keep going forward and up until you get to the headmaster. I don't care. But you keep saying something until I can pick you up. And he said, okay. And we made a pact. He said, I will stay close to the teachers and I don't want to be anywhere near this boy. And I said, that's a good idea. I would like you to stay away then. If that's what keeps you safe and makes you feel safe, then yeah, stay away from him. And since it happened, there was these sayings that were stuck in my head. They're Musqueam sayings. And I couldn't, for the life of me, I couldn't remember all of the words, and it was driving me crazy. So I asked my husband's niece what one of the sayings were. I said, take a picture of your tat. But she actually had a different, she had one of the sayings, a different saying that I thought she had. So she took a picture of it, and I was like, that was the other saying. Okay, I need to figure out which the other one is. And she took a picture, or not took a picture. She found what I was looking for, which is a rock that has carved words in it of Hunkaminam, Musqueam language, right at the front of the Museum of Anthropology. And that's what I was looking for. So one of them is remember your teachings. And the other one is we are one heart and one mind. And so I told the kids the next day to practice, and we practiced them because I wanted them to remember that we are of one heart and one mind. Even though we're apart, we're still together. And even though your dad we're apart from your dad, we're still together. So that one, we are of one heart and one mind, is Nutsamat Tashwalawinst. And the other one is remember your teachings, which is Huniwan Sep Kuthathsnawai. Oh, sorry. Remember your teachings, which is Huniwan Sep Kuthathnawayath. Yeah, so we've been practicing that, and I think that really helps with Emery. Before we leave each other and I let him go, I say to him, Natsamat Tashwalawinst, and he says it back to me. So he goes to school Wednesday, back to school Wednesday. I get phone calls from the nurses, and I'm sobbing because they're talking about the redness and how it's concerning them, that it's still swollen and red. So I make an appointment for the doctor, which was Thursday morning. Then I get a phone call from the counselor. Then I get a phone call from the assistant principal. And yeah, again, so sobbing mess in every phone call, and I just wish I could have said all of that without crying, but what could I do? I couldn't separate my emotions enough to get the words across. But I still got the words across. And I think things are moving in the right direction now. However, there was a little blip on Wednesday. My son says he wants to get picked up early. The teacher calls me. She said, he had a great day, fantastic day. But he says he wants to go home now. I checked to see if anything was wrong or if anything upset him. And he said, no, I just want to go home. And my mom said if I ever wanted to go home that she could pick me up, no questions asked. That was our deal. And so kudos for him for sticking up to what he was saying. Anyways, so I go to pick him and my other son up because it would make no sense for me to go back and forth in the last, hour and a half. And the teacher says he had a good time. The vice principal's there. He said he had a good time. And I go to drive off. I look at the gas and I was like, or at the gas tank, and I say, okay, we need to go get gas. 3 blocks away from the school. My son is putting the gas in the car. My 5-year-old says, Mom, I had a really good day today, except for one part with that kid, but other than that, I'm gonna sneeze. Chew. Seriously, that's how I sneeze. Oh, baby's waking up. And I said, 1 second, let me see if I can put him back to bed. Okay, he seems to have put himself back to sleep. I'll just make sure not to be as loud. Okay. So my son said, yeah, except for this one part with the kid, everything else was good. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, this kid threw a chestnut at my forehead. And I said, okay. I immediately was like, what? But I held that in and I said, okay, well, did you tell the teacher? Was there a teacher around? And he said, yeah, my teacher was there. And I said, okay, well then what happened? He said, nothing. I said, okay, well, what did she say? And he said, she told me it was an accident. And I thought, oh, Lord. After the phone calls we had and the strategies that were told to me by the teacher, the counselor, the assistant principal about keeping these two separate, and that my son's deal was to keep them separate. Like he said, to feel safe, he doesn't want anything to do with this child. I immediately, as soon as my son got back in the car, we were driving away, I Bluetoothed the our car phone, and I said, to the vice principals directly, and I just said, my son said that this kid threw a chestnut at his forehead. And the vice principal was really good about it. He said, okay, Emery, can you tell me about it? And Emery told him the whole story, and he said, okay, let me go digging and I'll call you back. And my door opened. So he calls back about 10 or 15 minutes later and he said, you're right, buddy. This boy did throw a chestnut at your forehead and that's not okay. And I held most of my emotions and I didn't cry or anything, so I'm really thankful for that. But I just said, hey, from here on out, I need full disclosure about anything that happens to my child. I am very annoyed and frustrated with the use of this word accident. This boy doesn't seem to care about consequences. I need to rebuild. I need to rebuild the trust between the teachers and my kid, because my kid is not disclosing anything to you guys, and that's disconcerting. When a kid doesn't feel that he can come up to his teachers and ask and tell them what's going wrong, because he feels like it won't amount to anything, that's disconcerting to me. And this was happening months ago, and I said that to the teachers. I said, he's not telling you guys because he says nothing changes, nothing works, it doesn't change anything, so he doesn't say anything to you guys anymore, and that is not okay. And the vice principal said, I understand and I agree and acknowledge that we do need to build trust again. And he's like, I think we're going to get there. And I'm going to be following up with this boy's family about the incident and the repercussions of it. And I said, okay. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. Yesterday was a better day. So that yesterday was, well, better day. Thursday, Emery went to the doctor's appointment. It was kind of cute because to get in, we had an appointment at 9 o'clock with the, for the walk-in clinic, the on-call not on call, but the walk-in clinic. But we got there early because we were dropping my son off at the school, and our family doctor is just like 2 blocks away. So we parked early, and the door is made out of glass. And I said, "Oh, look, there's our doctor." And she was in the front where the receptions were. And my 5-year-old had his stuffy, and he was like dancing in the window or in the glass door like this with the stuffy. And so anyways, they let us in, and my doctor ended up seeing us, our family doctor, which was great. She was not happy about the situation either. And she looked at Emery's hand and was like, yeah, no, that's infected. And so now he's on antibiotics. He's got like an oral antibiotics and the cream antibiotics to try to get that redness and swelling. She's like, I don't want that to get worse. I don't want that to get bigger. Yeah. And then I brought him to school, and I just called the vice principal to meet us at the front door because they don't allow parents to go into the school. And so the antibiotics have to be administered 4 times a day. So I was asking the vice principal if the school nurses could administer 2 of the doses while he's at school, so that I could do the morning and the evening, or else it would be, and it's for 10 days, so I don't want him to stay home with me for 10 days so that I could administer doses for him, or try to squeeze 3 doses from like 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock, which I don't think is probably the best course of action anyways. So anyways, he's on antibiotics. He had a good day. Someone's phoning me, but it's an 888 something number, so that's okay. Yeah, no more incidents with this boy yesterday, so knock on wood that everything will be okay. Yeah, I hope things get better. There's only, as I was saying in my emails to the school, is that there's only 5 more weeks, and you guys are in a position now where you have to rebuild my son's trust, that he feels safe and that he feels heard and that he feels protected, and that's going to be difficult in these last 5 weeks. But I was more annoyed that, you know, for months before it got to this point, I was doing daily checkups and recaps from the teachers. I was emailing my concerns because things were starting to progress into worse tauntings. Like, my son has been he puts himself in a vulnerable position by explaining that, you know, he lost his dad from a heart attack, and this kid would say, oh, you mean, because my husband's name is Terry Point, and so the kid goes, you mean Terry Fox? Which is fine, that's understandable. He thought Terry Fox, and my son said, no, Terry Point, and the kid goes, so Terry Fox. And I said, no. He said, no, my dad's name is Terry Point. And he goes, so it's Terry Fox, right? I mean, those little taunting things, but they're taunts. And to the point where it sort of progressed, right? Like, my son thinks he's Spider-Man. He thinks he is Spider-Man. And the kid said, Spider-Man's a dum-dum. And, you know, my son said, Spider-Man's not a dum-dum. Or in some cases he said, I'm not a dum-dum, right? Because he believes he is Spider-Man. And sort of the ones that really hurt Emery, though, was when the boy came up to him and told him it was stupid that his dad died over his heart. And again, you know, part of you can say, well, they're only 5 years old and they don't know. But I think at your most core self, at your most basic understanding of love and empathy and compassion, that going up to someone who lost their dad and saying that it's stupid that their dad died is hurtful. Don't you think? I mean, am I alone in that thought? Am I alone in thinking that I'm asking too much of 5-year-olds? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. My kids, I don't think it would ever, I'm not saying my kids are great, but I'm just saying I don't think it would clue into my kids to go up to someone who just lost their dad and say that it was stupid that their dad died over their heart. I don't know. So, yeah, I think the way that our school systems are set up, and you know, we have this anti-bullying day, which is one day where you acknowledge that what bullying is and how to stop a bully, or how to not bully. I don't know. It loses its meaning if after that one day you can't stop a bully in its tracks. You can't de-escalate the situation. I was trying to be a really proactive mom by trying to stop it before it got to this point, before my son had to get a pencil crayon stabbed into his hand and feel like he can't come to school anymore because he doesn't feel safe. I don't know. I think things in the school systems need to change. I think when taunts are happening, you take it seriously. You don't say that it's, oh, they're so young, they don't know that what they're saying is hurtful. What they're saying is hurtful, regardless if they think it's not hurtful or what. They need to know that that's not okay. They need to know that there's a better way to say something. They need to know that there is consequences for your actions. So if this kid, or any kid that taunts around like that, if they grow up thinking that it's okay to act like that as a child and not have any consequences, well, obviously they're going to grow up to be adults that think that they can do that stuff because they're above the consequence. So I do think schools are taking a really soft approach to something that can escalate. And me, myself, there was moments where I was bullied, and there was moments where I bullied people. And I got away with the bullying. Oh, she's a girl. You're so much older. There's no way she could have done that to you. Oh, yes, she could. I was a really ferocious scrapper when I was a little kid. And I was raised by a lot of like male cousins. Like I either had to play wrestling with those guys or I couldn't play at all. I either had to be their test dummy for wrestling moves or I didn't get to play anything. So I knew how to take care of myself. I knew how to scrap really good. And I got away with it. And that just like bolstered my power. Oh, I can get away with this. Like, how far can I take that? There was one time my brother's 3 years older than me. I think my brother was in grade, how old was I? He must have been in grade 1 or grade 2. Must have been grade 2. And it was their sports day. My brother went inside to go get more cookies or something. And he was taking a long time, and I remember I went inside the room, his classroom, and he was against the radiator, and there's 2 boys that were like pinning his shoulder so that he was right up against the radiator. And I went in there, I just ran in. I was like, get your hands off my brother! And I rammed my head into one of the kids, and then I think I punched or kneed the other kid in the balls. Like, I just had like no, I didn't hesitate. Both kids went down crying and screaming because I think the kid that I rammed went right into the radiator. The teacher came in and they said, "What's going on in here?" And the boys on the ground were like, "His sister hurt us." And I remember the teacher saying like, "Oh, she's just a little girl. There's no way she could have done that. I think you guys, you know, were messing around and you guys got hurt. Now let's go play outside now." And we all went outside. By the time I was in, I think I was in grade 1 or 2? Grade 1 or grade 2. I brought a basketball to school. And there was a kid in grade 7 who checked the ball for me because I was dribbling it as I was walking. And he checked me and he took it and he started playing on the basketball court with the other grade 7s. And I was like, "Give me back my ball." And I was angry. And he was like, "No." And they were still playing. I was like, "Give me back my ball." And some of his friends were like, "Hey, dude, maybe we should get back the ball." And he was like, "No." And I lost it. Like, I went right up in there, like, amongst the grade 7s. I was grade 1, grade 2. So I was like 6 or 7. I went right up in there. And I smacked the ball out of his hand. And then I, like, punched him in the face. And I just kneed him in the balls or something. I seem to be really great at the right height to just knee people in the balls. Anyways, he went down. I went to go get my ball. Supervision aide came because there was screaming and howling from this grade 7. And the supervision aide's like, "What happened? What's going on?" And the guy goes, "She hit me. She punched me and kneed me in the balls." And I remember the supervision aide saying, "This little 6-year-old, 7-year-old punched you and kneed you in the balls." And she looked at me and she goes, "Did you do that?" And he goes, and I said, "Well, he took my ball." I started to cry, almost like on demand. Like I just, and she was like, "Oh, she's really upset you took the ball. Let's get you inside. You go into the office and get checked out." That was that. Like, I got away with everything. And it wasn't until I was in grade 3 and I was bullying this one kid mercilessly, like, and he never said anything. He didn't talk to the teachers. He didn't talk to his parents. He just let me bully him. He didn't retaliate. And one day I was making fun of him. It was just me and him, and I was making fun of him. And he said to me, like, point blank, he looked at me and he said, "You know, if you weren't so mean to me, I would really like to be your friend." And I started crying. I cried so hard. I was like, and I went home and I was just like, how could I be so mean? What is wrong with me? This kid wants to be my friend and I'm just so evil to him. And like the next day, I did like a whole reconstructive mental surgery on myself. And the next day I went up to him and he flinched. For the rest of the school year, he flinched. I'm such a wretched person. And I said to him, I said, "Hi, Brendan, how are you?" And he went like, "What? I'm okay." And he had this weariness, like I was going to come out and smack him or hit him or something. I felt like such a wretch. And the rest of the school year, I made sure to be really nice and attentive, and he could not believe it. Like, he kept thinking, you know, the other shoe's gonna drop. She's gonna, like, chuck me down a hill or push me off the monkey bars. I don't know. Oh my goodness. So I know both sides. But yeah, people unchecked with bullying will just continue to bully, and they'll just get more and more brave and daring with it until someone really gets hurt. I mean, I'm glad that I stopped it being a bully at in grade 3. Like, it just kind of, but it took another person to get up in my face and say, like, you know what, if you weren't such a bully, I'd like to be your friend. which was kind of like the saying of like, you're actually a good person, you're just kind of evil. I'm just like, I am evil, what's wrong with me? Oh my goodness. Yeah. If you have any bullying stories, post them down below, because I'd love to hear like how you know, if you were a bully or if you got bullied and how you got through it. Because yeah, my kids asked me the other day, Mom, were you ever bullied? And I said yes. And they said, well, how did you deal with it? And I said, I took care of it myself, which is probably not the right thing to say to your kids who are getting bullied. But I kind of tried to say, like, my teachers, a lot of it happened outside of the school, or outside of class, I should say, so no teachers were there to tell and that sort of thing. So I took it upon myself to stop the bully. But that's not always going to be the case for people, right? They won't be able to sometimes hold their own against a bully, especially if the bully has like 3 people and you're just one person. Even the best person that has self-defense moves on and all of that stuff, if there's 3 of them and there's 1 of you, it's going to be a pretty unfair, sorry, my leg's falling asleep. It's going to be a pretty unfair fight. That being said, how old was I? 4? 5. I was 5, and there was I say next door neighbor, but he was like 8 houses away from us. Me and my brother went over there to play, and then when we were walking back to our house, that person's next door neighbor, there was a girl and her friend who were just wretched people. They're just mean girls. They didn't like that I was playing with the boys. Anyways, they grabbed the like branches from their rose bush, and I used to live on a very busy main street, and they, as I was walking by myself, they came out of the bushes and they started to whip me with these thorn bushes on my back and my arms. And it was 2 of them and it was 1 of me, and they were probably like, I was like 4 or 5, and they were probably 9, 10, maybe 10, 11, something like that. They were quite older than me. And they were whipping me with branches, and I just went like fists flailing, right? Like I just went boom, and I was using elbows and I was using knees and I was headbutting, and like I'm bad. I'm a pretty bad scrapper. Anyways, a car that was driving saw what was happening. They were like attacking me, and he pulled over on this busy road where you're not really supposed to pull over. And he was like, hey, leave that little girl alone. And the girls were like bleeding too, and like they were screaming because I was really hurting them. Like I was really going for it. And they ran off back to the house, and my back was all bloody. My arms were bloody because of the thorns scratched into me. And that guy said, like, are you okay? Do I need to take you to someone? Where's your mom? And my fear was that if my mom found out that I got hurt, she wouldn't let me play outside, because my mom doesn't want me. She didn't want me to play outside. She was like, I don't want you to get dirty. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want to nah. So, I was like, no, I'm fine. I went home. Sorry, I'm watching a cat outside digging into my auntie's yard, and I'm thinking like, okay, I hope that's okay. I don't know, digging a hole. I hope a mouse doesn't pop out of it or something. Yeah, so what did I do is I just, I did what I do all the time. I got hurt when I was a kid and I didn't want my parents to know. I like wiped it up as best as I could, and then I put Vaseline on top of it, and then I would just like bandage it and wear long sleeves. That's how I hid everything. long sleeves, Vaseline, and Band-Aids. I'll probably leave it here. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.